Today's project is changing the engine oil level safety shutoff sensor in the Generac 3300i. Alright, we're back on the generator. A while ago I had an issue with the low oil shutoff just not working. So I unplugged it and the generator started back up, so that was the issue. So they sent me a replacement under warranty, and you can hear the float in it. So I'm going to try to replace that today, but the issue is it's literally inside the engine, and I'm going to have to take that off because it's obviously immersed in oil because it's an oil level sender, switch, whatever. So I'm going to try to take this apart and figure out how to replace that, and I guess it was a good time because I've got to change oil in the unit anyhow, so let's get to it. Okay, so part of the disassembly process is I took the 4 screws off the front panel down here. On the back side there are 6 screws where the exhaust panel is. There's 6 there. Those are all Phillips. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the handle. Underneath this rubber gasket there's a clip that holds the 2 halves together, and then the remaining 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's 3 10mm bolts on the bottom here, and then this piece can be removed. Okay, for the side with the pull string for the recoil starter, there is also a charcoal canister tucked in there, and between that and the recoil string, it's not the easiest to take this piece off, and I'm hoping I don't need to. I'll just let that be. Same on that side, there was 3 10mm bolts on the bottom to get that off. For the back of the muffler housing assembly, there were 5 or 6 Phillips screws to pull that off. And let's see what's going to take to get this off. Okay, so the exhaust comes off with 2 13mm nuts right there, 2 10mm bolts holding it there, and I think, yeah, okay, so we got that off. That's the muffler assembly, and well, probably just toasted the gasket, but I'm just gonna hope that goes back on. Yep. Okay, so this piece comes off with 4 8mm bolts and 1 Phillips screw up at the top there, and that'll just come right off. We'll set that to the side. So here is the crankcase of the engine. The sensor wire is right here and goes into it. Now this is still full of oil. Of course, there's gonna be oil sitting in here. There is an oil drain here. I'm assuming, well, not sure, but per service manual you can dump the oil out of here, and that's what I'm going to try to do without making a giant mess, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so I got these 10mm bolts out right there, and the 2 8mm bolts that go here on the opposite side for the engine isolator mount. I just stuck a flathead right here to break this apart. As you can see, there's oil coming out everywhere. That's even after taking out a bucket full, well, a little bit. So, gonna go ahead and separate this and clean up this oil mess and go from there. Okay, so I've got the back of the engine off. I did have to put a screwdriver underneath here to lift the engine up to get it off the mounts. But here is the back of the crankshaft with the timing gear, which is plastic, which really wish that was metal. Have your bearing here for the crankshaft, and here is the oil low level warning sensor thing oil. So let's go ahead and get this out of the end of the cover here and start putting things back together. It looks like this gasket came out in pretty good shape. So I'm going to be very, very careful with this because I'm going to try to reuse it. I don't have another one. I know that's not the right thing to do, but let's go and get this out of here. Okay, so I just took this piece off right here, and this was the condition of the wire. So it looks like what had happened is the insulation split, and this was grounding out on the case and making this sensor think it was low on oil. So we're gonna see if we can avoid that the second time around here. I'm gonna try to figure out why that happened. Okay, so I think I just got unlucky to where the wire pinched between just right here on the edge of this bracket, right inside there. I know it's going to be really hard to see, but I have the wire routed, I believe, correctly now, and it still moves free. You can see over there to the right. So it's not pinched on anything. I stuck this the best I could. The gasket did tear right there. I don't think it'll be a big deal. The rest of the gasket looks in pretty good shape here, so I think we'll be okay. This is snug down. Bearings look great. I'm going to clean this up and go ahead and stick it back on the engine here. Okay, so that took a little bit of persuasion for the two dowel pins, the crankshaft, and I'm assuming the camshaft to seat back into there. It is a tight fit. A little bit of wiggling to get it started, and a couple light taps with my palm or fingers, hand, whatever, got that to go boom and right back in. And our wire is good here. Be able to connect that up. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these bolts down. I'm going to do them all by hand and then kind of, I don't know, crisscross this and do a couple sequences to get this evenly on the engine. I don't have a service manual. I'm just going to make an assumption that kind of making a pattern around there, hopefully cinching that down evenly, will be the right move. Okay, so I got the end of the crankcase snugged back up pretty good. Let's fingers crossed that gasket is fine. Otherwise, I'll probably be doing this again. Yep. The longer of the two go up here, the shorter of the two go down here. Don't forget the Phillips there. Alright, so I got the muffler back on, and while I was here, I wanted to inspect the flame arrestor, spark something. You just want to make sure the screen is clear and not clogged up with any debris. So the gas tank has a little rubber pin, and so does the inverter part, and that lines up there and lines up there. Those are tricky, and you just have to work with those to go back and forth, but the gas tank needs to sit in there, and of course the other side will sit in there as well. That is the tricky part of getting this orange case back on and lined up right. Also fiddling with this little rubber gasket thing, but we'll get to that after the valve adjustment. Okay, just confirmed with the service manual. The clearance should be 0.004 inches. I think that's 4 thousandths, plus or minus a thousandths. So I have the engine, I think, on the whatever stroke, on the 4-stroke, and there is just a little bit of clearance there. I'm going to get the feeler gauge out and see where we are. Okay, so with the feeler gauge, spec is 0.04, and what you're going to do is check clearance between the valve stem and the end of this bolt on the rocker. If I can get the camera in there. So right in there. So 4 thou is spec, and I was able to go up to 7,000, so that's way out of spec. We are going to tighten that clearance up. And what that's going to do is take out some of this valve lash. Alright, to adjust the valves, you want the piston at top dead center, so both valves are completely closed and there is no pressure from the rocker arm pushing down on the spring. Inside there, I have it adjusted. The 4/1000 gauge fits through there. The 5/1000 does not. So we are right dead close on spec, and I checked it after I cinched this nut down, and I checked it a few different times. So I think we are right on spec on the intake valve. Let's move it down to 4/1000 on the exhaust valve. I know it's tough to see, but there is a good amount of lash that is over spec. So let's get that adjusted. Okay, so got the valve lash adjusted. So the movement right there is right at 4/1000. I cannot slide the 5/1000 feeler gauge under on both the exhaust and intake valves. So I think those are just about perfect. Those are right within spec. This was 10 or 11,000, so this was way out of spec, and this was about 8 or 9,000. So we got those back down. This is a 9mm loosen, and then there are little marks there to help you orient where you're at. I just did a little by little, snugged it up, checked it, until I got it right where I wanted it. So let's get the valve cover back on. Let's put this thing back together, put some fresh oil in it, and let's give it a shot. Well, I think the hardest part of this job was getting this case back on here. There are 2 alignment pins, one here and on the opposite side that the orange case sits into. There's one here, and one back here for the gas tank to sit in, and that's what holds the gas tank up from the engine. The gas tank's actually supported by this orange outside case here. It took about 15 minutes of just fiddling with that to get all those alignment rubber rectangles. You kind of see the outline there, lined up behind there. Once it is aligned, it will go together nicely. If you have to force it or you're using screws to force it together, it's definitely not right. But once you get it lined up correctly, it will just come together. Well, it runs. And I guess we'll call that a job well done. And for memory purposes, 108 hours on it. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video of taking this apart in my living room and getting all these service items done. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next one.